Hello and welcome to GB News. It seems to me that we knew an awful lot of what had gone wrong back in 2012 when the Jimmy Savile case came to light. And that's now 11 years ago. The government is now contemplating legislation. How would you explain this very long gap of time?
Well, the actual inquiry took over 7 years, and it was a very important inquiry. And the more it delved, the more it found. And thousands of victims of sexual abuse were able to give very heart-wrenching testimony about what had happened to them. But it's really important, although it's taken a long time, it's really important to get our response right. And the government is working hard on this. This is a scourge in our society. And what the report found, what the inquiry found, is that it's in all sorts of parts of our society. And frankly, we've got to stamp it out. So I am proud that the government is taking this action today with a new change of law in mandatory reporting, which was a key recommendation of the report.
I don't believe you're taking action today, are you? You're starting a process of consultation that will lead towards legislation.
Well, we've indicated quite clearly that we are going to be making it mandatory for those that are in positions of power, like teachers, social workers and volunteers that work with children, to make sure that they do disclose what's happened to the police. And what we're doing is consulting. We're going to consult immediately with professionals in the field to get the right scheme, which will be a legal mandatory reporting obligation. It's quite revolutionary, and it is needs some thought, but we are working on it fast.
To go to the other end of the problem, we all know about the Carl Beach case, that is to say, a case where false accusations were made against prominent people. How will you safeguard against children, maybe, or people who were abused when they were children, making malicious charges in order to discredit people? How will you know whether that's going on? Because, as I understand, you're putting an obligation on people to report, not to use their judgment.
It's not an obligation to sanction, it's an obligation to report. And the properly trained professionals will look at each and every allegation very, very carefully. And occasionally one does get false reports, but you get that with any offence. But we can't stop in making sure that people are protected. Children are the most vulnerable part of our society, as well as the elderly. We must make sure that they're not sexually abused. So I don't accept we're going to be rife with false reports. There may be one or two, and they will be dealt with and identified. The overwhelming people that gave evidence are speaking the truth to the inquiry, and it was very heartbreaking testimony. We need to act.
And does this only apply within professional settings? In other words, let's take an example of someone who discovers that a family member is involved in a crime against children. Does that person have an obligation to report the crime to the police?
What's being looked at the moment is people that work professionally and people that volunteer with children. And obviously, if something is hidden within a community or in a family, it's very much harder to get to the truth. But the actual fine-tuning of exactly how the system works is being worked on at this minute. If I can also just mention something else, Michael, what we are doing, which is instant, is the government is giving £600,000 to the NSPCC for a whistleblowers helpline, where people will be able to phone up that work for organisations where previously they were uncertain as to what to do, but they're going to be able to speak to professionals at the NSPCC, employees. That's really important. We're also giving extra funding to the NSPCC for their other helplines. We are doing a lot in this area.
I suppose that could also have been done in the last 11 years. But many thanks. Sarah Dines, MP, the Safeguarding Minister. Thanks for being on GB News.